So I've been wanting to make a video like this for a long time. Uh, no one has asked for such a video. I'm not doing it because somebody asked me to. I'm not doing it because people need to hear this or anything. It's just something I've wanted to do for a long time. And this video it'll mostly cover the kind of music I'm interested in and certain things that musicians do or want to do or should not do, and different aspects of music, harmony, melody, rhythm, different ways of expressing ideas, conceiving ideas, composition, improvisation, all those things. But most importantly, it has to do with the two things which I consider fundamentally more important than learning music or practicing music is being and doing. And let me try and explain what I mean by that. The first thing that I mentioned is being. So, firstly, let me just say this. I don't think musicianship or any kind of practice in life, whether it's related to arts or finance or sports or business or teaching or any of those things, I don't think it is independent of the way you are as a person, as a being on a day-to-day basis, whether inside your house or outside when you step out into the world. It should not be. It can be, but it should not be exclusive. It should be interdependent. You should not be a different person when you're playing music, for example. I play music, and you should not be a different person when you're not playing music. By that I mean, it's not like, basically it's like you should not necessarily be someone else when you're playing music to people or when you're trying to create something. You should be what you are at every given moment of your life, or at least try to be so, because there's a lesson to it. There are lots of people I know personally, and there are lots of people I admire, very famous musicians, who are exceptional at their instrument. They are exceptional at the physical aspect of the instrumentation, so to speak. But when I personally listen to them live, or whether it's an album or a live video, wherever it might be streaming, there's a sense of disconnect between the person and the music the person is responsible for. There's a disconnect in my mind or in my heart. I don't feel like it's honest. I don't feel like this person really means it. I can see they have really put themselves through the rings, so to speak, in order to be as efficient and to build up the physical dexterity to be able to play like that. I can see that, and I really appreciate that, and I marvel at that. But the center point of all that is your physical dexterity, your physical capacity should be able to convey your being, who you are as a person. And I play the guitar left-handed, and because I don't necessarily come from a family uh, where people are very interested in guitar, specifically guitar oriented music. My mom's side, they uh, they have had a lot of very very good capable Indian classical musicians, Hindustani classical musicians, singers, sitar players, tabla players, many more, I think, many more instruments. These are the ones I can remember so far. So there is a sort of a loose lineage of musicianship in the bloodline, but because I play the guitar left-handed, the immediate assumption of somebody who is sort of a novice is that, oh, you must be inspired by Jimi Hendrix because you play the guitar upside down. And uh, it's not necessarily true that I'm inspired by Jimi Hendrix, because when I first wanted to play the guitar, I did not even realize that certain people are playing it like this and certain people are playing it like this, because my mind was not really looking at the person or even the guitar, it was just listening to the music. Even if I was watching a live video, it just did not register that the guitar can be left-handed or right-handed, and I just picked it up and I started playing the way it felt comfortable. The reason I'm mentioning this Hendrix thing is because growing up in India, in Kolkata, you get to hear, because so many people are playing the blues, almost everybody is playing the blues, especially at that age when you're 14, 15, you've started out on acoustic guitar and people are learning Metallica songs and a few Zeppelin songs and Pink Floyd songs, and and it's all somewhere rooted in the blues. Okay, so this this fascination was kind of forced upon me. This enigma of Jimi Hendrix, because I don't play the blues, because I have never had any strong interest in the blues, and more importantly, I can't play the blues because I think the blues is a very very deep genre, and just because you can play the pentatonic scale or the blues scale does not mean you have the blues. I think the blues has to be meant more than any other genre, at least from the current Western world. It is like probably the most popular form of music today. At least among musicians, everybody somewhere plays the pentatonic scale, even if you're a jazz player. Even if you are, in certain realms of music, you utilize the pentatonic scale mixed with a few other elements from different exotic scales. So the pentatonic scale is like a very, very crucial part of musicianship, and it's been like that for the last, I don't know, 50, 60, 70, 80 years. I'm not sure. I'm not really sure about the history of the blues. I've never really gone very deep into it. But the globalization of the pentatonic scale, um, it has created an enormous impact on the world in a very positive way. But currently, I see it um, depleting musicians of curiosity. And it has nothing to do with what people say, that you're stuck in the box, the pentatonic box, and you can't break out of it. It's not that. Firstly, I want to ask this to musicians. I have not gotten myself to ask them this personally, because I think it is something, music, like all other art forms or anything you do in life, is like, it's a choice, it's a deliberate or partially deliberate decision that you make based on impressions that you have of yourself or of the players you admire or you want to imitate. why, the question that I wanted to ask is, why are you playing the blues, or why are you utilizing the pentatonic scale so much? Is it because you really mean it, or is it because you've been conditioned by so much of pentatonic music that you can't really think for yourself? You think you really feel it in your heart and your soul, but maybe it's just a conditioning that makes you feel like that. Because that's what conditionings do. You are convinced that this is how you feel, or this is how it is, because you're conditioned to believe. You're conditioned to believe because of all these years of reinforcement, either uh, consciously, subconsciously, unconsciously. That's what a conditioning is. So there are a few musicians, not a few, more than a few. There are a few musicians I have seen live perform in front of my eyes who can really mean the blues. Okay, they really feel it. They really understand how that language should be spoken, because I think it is a very honest language. And I am not uh, trying to convince anyone, out of playing the blues. It's not like that. It's just I'm asking people to actually question, why are you playing the blues? Is it because you really feel it? Is it because you've been conditioned by it? Is it because you have not explored the musical world enough? Is it because the pentatonic scale is easier to play than most other scales? I'm not asking you to shred. I'm not asking you to do other things. I'm just asking you to question, why do you do it? Do you really like it? If you really like it, then probably yes, you can go along with it. If you find yourself thinking that maybe, yeah, I don't really like it, it's just something very available to me, easily available. So maybe you'd like to think more, maybe you'd like to understand more of who you are and what kind of sound you actually want to progress towards. What kind of sounds actually, you know, work for you. And try to take away the image of the performers, because so much of it is rooted in the image of how somebody's playing the instrument, either the drums or the guitar, the keyboard, how they're singing, the frontmanship. Try to take the image away. Just listen to the song with your eyes closed, and because when you see a guitarist bending a string and making the guitar face and bending back, and everybody's going wild and cheering, you're so drawn to the image of it all, the the feeling of being celebrated, that you think that playing that kind of music and playing it like that with that kind of body language will also lead to that kind of uh, you being cherished. It's not necessarily true. It does happen because people are also brainwashed into doing the same things over and over again. People are also conditioned, the audience is also conditioned to cheer when they hear certain things. It's like a trigger. It's like a trigger for them. This is what I've experienced. Most of the people don't really listen, especially the ones who have sat down, who've bought tickets, or who've come along to listen to you play. They are not really listening unless it's like a music, like a very, very intimate musical scenario. Okay, people might listen in an intimate scenario, but we don't know how much they actually understand about it. But at least you can be certain that the aspect of listening will be far more intense than, let's say, a situation where there's a lot of chatter, and the buzz of the gig might distract you from the actual listening part. And the reason I know personally that people don't really listen is because this is my experience with people, not just people who've come to gigs to watch other musicians perform. It's with people in general, people have their own set of ideas already established in their mind. And unless you say things which go along with with that set of ideas, with those ideas, they will not respond in a positive way. People don't necessarily have a blank slate when they come to receive something, because for me that's how it is when I sit down to listen to an album or something. It's more of a reception, it's not more like an expectation of what's to come. You receive things, and you might like certain things, you might not like most things, but at least you received it honestly. You did not have this preconceived notion. Okay, and people, I don't know, it's like people don't really, they're not really present. They're not really present as an audience to actually give you a correct or more or less accurate analysis of what just happened, because they're so convinced and controlled by their own patterns of thinking and perception. And it takes a while to decondition yourself from those kind of patterns of thinking. It takes a while to actually see things more or less for the way they are. It takes a much longer time to see things for exactly what they are. So the first point, I return to the first point, which was being. You have to be the person you are, the most honest version of who you are at all given times. You have to at least try to be so. And it cannot just be a one-time thing when you're playing music. It has to, that honesty has to conduct itself in almost every aspect of your life. I'm not necessarily asking you to be a better person. The betterment of who you are can only come through you. And it can only come through you once you understand, accept, that these are my flaws and these are the things I'm good at. And I see both of them equally. I do not necessarily cherish the things I'm good at, nor do I necessarily look down upon the things that I'm bad at. I see both of them to be equal, because good and bad are equal. If you look at it carefully, good and bad are actually equal. So once you have that distinction made, once you have that first step done, that I think this is who I am. Okay, yeah. If I'm totally being honest with myself, I think this is how I am. Beyond all the false courtesies and the pretension and the social image and the niceties that I have to force upon myself when I meet people for the first time, or when I'm in a group, I can't say certain things because it might offend someone, this and that. I'm not asking you to be rude and unfiltered. That's not what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to be honest. Honesty might not get you very far in life, but maybe you don't have to go that far. Maybe it's just an overachiever's mindset. Maybe it's just an ambitious mindset. You don't necessarily have to go too far in life. People have conditioned you into believing that you have to go to the corners of the earth in order to find success, because that's where the journey ends. You have to go all the way. But going all the way does not mean that every person goes the same distance. It's not like that. Just like, every individual has their own capacity, they also have their own individual distance to cover in life. So you need to understand how far you should be going. You need to go. You want to go further, that's on you. You want to do more things, that's on you. But how much do you actually need to do? There's a great distinction between necessity and desire. And As we all know, desire is not always the best possible solution, the best possible motivation. Desire leads to a lot of devastation. Necessity is a burden to bear. Necessary things are always burdensome, but once you achieve them, the necessity is met and it feels neutral, it feels good. Once one desire is achieved, the other desire pops up, because desire is a never ending illusion of sorts, whereas necessity is kind of realistic. I won't say it is real, but it is definitely more realistic than desire. Once a necessity is met, once a need is met, there is a sense of satisfaction and completeness for some time. Then another necessity pops up, but it's a very different feeling, if you understand what I'm saying. Desire can possess you, necessity can never possess you like that. Unless you give in to it, unless it becomes your entire life that I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this, otherwise, it's not going to happen. How am I going to earn? How am I going to take care of my family? This, that. It's a very deep study into humanity. It's not just a deep study into music. When it comes to music, for example, I'll show you. I'll play something for you and I'll show you. For example, okay. So what I tried to show there, is you don't need to play more than what the moment requires. Okay, when I sit down with the instrument, most of the time I'm trying to actually listen to the silence, because the silence carries the information. When you delve into musicianship long enough, you'll understand that silence is much more important than music in itself, that the silence determines the sound per se. Okay, the silence carries the information, and as a musician, as a dedicated, devoted musician, it is your responsibility to listen to silence, not just music. So I try to demonstrate that sometimes it's not just about playing less, it's about playing for the right amount of time. I don't know how it's going to sound, what I just played. Maybe it'll sound really bad, but I tried my best to show you that the necessary amount and not more often leads to better music and better musicianship, and often describes a better musician. When you do the necessary thing, not the extravagant thing. The extravagant thing does not necessarily show a better musician, it shows a better showman. You are exceptional at the display of skill, but you are not necessarily exceptional at manifesting musical possibilities. There are people who can do both, who are exceptional at expressing music, with exceptional skill. Okay, and they're actually rare. They're not as common as you think they are. If you want, let's say I do something that I want to do instead of something that I need to do. If I disregard the silence, if I play more than what is required, I'm not trying to make a mistake. I made a mistake because I'm not really listening. I'm just going for it. Okay, there's a kind of, what can I say? A kind of impulse, a kind of instinct kind of thing, which is not a very conscious thing to do. It doesn't lead to the best results. When you start doing what you want to do instead of listening to what you need to do, there is a conflict between the given moment and your desires. Very rarely do your desires correspond to the moment you're living. When your desires correspond to the moment you're actually living in, then you are truly in a good place. You kind of free them. You're not trapped. Because you see it for what it really is, and you desire for what truly is. You don't desire for some imaginary bullshit. So that was to do with being. Took a long time explaining the first point. The second point can be summarized very, very quickly. Just a moment. The second point is doing. When you are what you truly are, then you can do what you truly can be. I'll repeat that. When you are what you truly are and who you truly are, you can do what you're truly meant to be. You can do what you're truly meant to do, rather. Sorry. I have a bad cold. And the only way to know what you truly are or who you truly are is to question. It is to question what people have told you so far. It is to question what you've told yourself so far. Sometimes smoking helps the cough. It is to question what you think of yourself, what you've been thinking of yourself so far. What
you're convinced of and what you're not convinced of. So, as I said, it's a deep study of the human condition, not just of the particular field you're interested in. The only way to do what you're meant to do, at least in the musical field, is to understand the root of your musical likings, by your musical fancy, for a better word, lack of a better word. For example, I started playing guitar because I was inspired by David Gilmour long time ago when I was a kid. But I was not inspired by the blues influence playing. I was inspired by the fact that I was not inspired by the musical language. That's what I'm trying to say. I was inspired by the fact that he could make me feel like that through a guitar solo. And although it's true that a particular scale can evoke a certain emotion, it is also true that you can get that same emotion in a different scale if you play it in a certain way. So my focus had become, how do I feel like that when I play the instrument? At least how do I feel like that myself? Whether I can make somebody else feel like that is not really my concern right now. I sort of came to the realization that the language you use is directly related to what you perceive. I'm very bad at mathematics and physics and all that, but I had a friend in college who was a very big fan of Ludwig Wittgenstein. And there's a famous quote by Wittgenstein in one of his books, which says, "The limits of my language are the limits of my world." Something like that. I might be paraphrasing, but it's true. The language you speak opens new dimensions to your perception. You learn a different language, and there are some words that you won't find in your current spoken language that you might find in the new language. And that just opens up a new dimension of communication and perception altogether. So the language that intrigued me was the language of depth and feeling and honesty, rather than what was happening on the guitar, what was happening on the instruments. It was what was happening within me. That language intrigued me. I'm still inspired by David Gilmour. I'm still inspired by Jimi Hendrix. I'm still inspired by Jimmy Page and all the great blues players, rock players. Love. But to understand and acknowledge your limitations as a musician, personally speaking, I'm not the most dexterous. I can't do all the fancy stuff. I can't run across the fretboard like that. This is how I normally play lead stuff. I'll show you it. I don't have a looper or anything right now. It's just the guitar plugged into the amp. So I'll just use the low string as a drone for some support. So most of the time I do something this because I am Indian and I like Indian classical music a lot. Stuff like that. I choose to play slow because I realized that's the pace I like the most. When I listen to Indian classical music, I like the alap much more than the remaining parts. I like the slow introduction. It's usually the longest of all the four parts, I think, or the three parts. And for like melodic playing or playing lines, I relate more to Indian classical music than I do to blues music or metal music or even jazz music. But my main interest in music has actually to do with harmony. And I know my skills, I know my modes. I do them in a vertical way rather than the horizontal way because there's more feeling to it, according to me. And plus, there was a time I could do it like this pretty well, but now things are different. My hands are different now. I'm a lot slower. So playing it. There's more feeling. There's more lyricism, more poetry, according to me at least. But I'll play a bit of harmony just to give you an idea of why it's my main focus. Okay, I'll keep it. When I play harmony, even when I play melody, I make sure that I do not necessarily follow a rhythm, a fixed rhythm, a fixed meter. I don't like doing that because I think somewhere it hinders creativity. Although there are many instances where you can get certain musical ideas which you will not be able to perceive or conceive without there being a fixed meter, because you're playing and your mind and your consciousness arranges itself to fit the meter, and then your musical ideas are pronounced in relation to that meter, and ideas emerge like that, things you would not be able to conceive otherwise. But the reason I don't necessarily like playing to a fixed rhythm is because I think it makes the song less interesting. It makes it very, uh, it's not boring, it's just kind of, I don't know, it does not involve me as much. When there are these haphazard movements, haphazard in the sense not suddenly out of the blue just because you wanted to do it, not like that. Again, it correlates to the silence. The silence will tell you to slow down or to speed up, and it's not necessarily a fixed thing that you have to speed up after 8 bars or you have to slow down after 8 bars. It's not like that. There's no fixed metric to this silent information. It's like the waves. It's like the waves that, that holds everything together, that holds the illusion together, so to speak. So that's what I mean by listening to silence. It's like listening to the waves of, you can call it creation or the simulation or the, the interwoven fabric of reality or whatever you want to call it. It's listening to that and aligning your consciousness, your mind, and your intention to that movement that allows you to actually flow. Okay, and you can flow in a fixed metric as well. That is also possible. But the flow that you can acquire when you do not have a fixed metric is far more revealing, I would say. It's far more revealing. There's a sense of comfort to it, and there's a sense of mystery and revelation to it. And it's the same thing with melody. I'll just play a few more lines.
example, instead of playing, uh, you can do it like that, but I would do it like it's like there's more emphasis. It's like something is actually being said instead of doing everything. It's a bit childish. Instead, you take a bit longer and you emphasize it in such a way that it actually sounds like something is being said, something is being meant. You're not just saying it, you're actually meaning it. Then, so then again, it's not fixed metric. So let's say there is a fixed metric. Let's say I'm playing. Let's say this is the rhythm pattern. Didn't really like it. Didn't really like it. I played. There were a few good ideas, but it was very childish, amateurish, because I'm actually trying to force myself into showing what it would be like if I played to a fixed rhythm of sorts. But I normally choose not to do it. I feel a bit rash. I feel like doing it, like you really focus on the notes and don't be ashamed of playing simple stuff like it has a great vocal quality, the simple stuff. Don't always have to do, fancy stuff. Basically, basically that's what I really wanted to talk about. The two main things that I consider very essential for honest musicianship is being and doing. I don't think you can be an honest musician unless you are who you are at every given moment and that your doing is totally in relation to your being. You can be a very successful musician, you can be rich and famous, you can have a lot of money, you can have a lot of fame, you can have a lot of people admiring you, a lot of accolades, but you might not necessarily be the best musician, you might not necessarily be the most honest musician. And again, this is not a commentary on anyone that I know of. It's just something that I tell myself that maybe my own personal way has to deal with honesty of being and the honesty of doing. It is not so much about thinking. I think when I'm not playing music. I don't think about music when I'm playing music. I don't think that's the way. I listen when I play music. And when I'm not playing music, I think about music. I think about maybe I could have done this better. Maybe I could have done that more. Maybe I could have done that less. And it's always good to be relaxed. It's always good to be relaxed. I'm not asking you to take it casual. This is something I believe. The reason musicians practice so much is so that we don't have to practice so much. We don't want to practice so much. We want to play. We don't want to practice so much. And the reason we practice so much is because in the future we really don't want to practice this much. We want to practice less and play more. And the best way to do it is take out all the unnecessary, irrelevant bullshit that you've been imposing upon the instrument and upon yourself all these years. Don't do it. If it doesn't sound good, don't try to perfect something that doesn't sound good after months and months and months and probably years of practicing. If it still doesn't sound good, you're not meant to play that shit. It's a very obvious fact. And trust me, playing improves when you take away the irrelevant stuff. So does life. You take away all the irrelevant bullshit that you were not supposed to do in the first place. You either started doing it because people told you to, or because you felt like, oh, it's cool because other people were doing it. You take all that away and you do what you really, truly, genuinely feel like doing. Your life and your musicianship will improve. It cannot be helped. It will improve. It will improve. And it's better to not be challenged by other people who are better than you, apparently. Better than you at playing fast scales, better than you at, let's say, everything. Better than you at everything. Don't feel challenged. Try to understand what makes them so good. Okay, I'm not that kind of person who's very eager to learn. I don't live by that philosophy that the day I stop learning is the day I stop living. I don't believe in that shit. The day I stop listening to what people are trying to teach me is the day I start actually learning, actually listening to what is really being said. I start listening to what the silence has to say. People say a lot of irrelevant crap all the time, and they dress it up as something profound, like I am right now. But you have to understand the spirit of the conversation. You have to understand the spirit of what is being said. And if you find the conversation to be hollow, no matter how profound the words seem, remove yourself from that conversation. You don't need that. It'll only distract you from the real thing. Some people say very few things, and those things stay with you forever because the spirit was so strong. There were just a few words spoken, but the spirit of that sentence was so strong that it just resonates with your consciousness. And it stays there. It's more than a memory. It's like a living realization. It's not a memory in your mind somewhere. It's part of your being then. When it is so profound that it just resonates, it becomes a part of your life. You'll see yourself bending to the profoundness of those spoken words, or maybe a song that you've heard that is so profound that your musicianship bends, and you might not have even noticed it. Maybe a few years down the road you realize, maybe this was the song that actually made my playing and my musical decision-making process move this way. Maybe this was the song, maybe this was the album, this was the artist. That's how things find expression. Most things find expression in an unknown way within us. And the things that happen outside of us, we know more or less why it's happening. This is the reason. You can point at it evidently, but the real stuff happens within. It always happens within us. And so I think I'll end the video here. I've been talking for around an hour now. So that's about it. It's something. There's a lot more I've had to say. I had to say a lot more, but it's okay. Maybe some other time. But if you were to take away anything, if you want to take away, if you want to take away anything from this video, is that don't don't be dishonest to yourself. You might not be the most likable person, you might not be the most talented person or whatsoever, but don't lie to yourself and pretend to be a likable person. Don't lie to yourself and say that, don't justify your incapacity with something clever. Don't fool yourself. Don't live in a delusion. Don't delude yourself. Be honest with yourself. Understand where things have to be improved and try to improve them. And really, these things do work. You don't need to watch motivational videos. You don't need to attend seminars. You don't need to go to spiritual retreats. You don't need those things. You need to be honest with yourself. I believe honesty is fundamentally the most important thing in life. Honesty reveals who you are, whether you're a good person or a bad person. Honesty reveals who you are. And once you can accept who you are truly, you understand who you are truly, then who you are finds expression. And when who you are finds expression, you will not want to be anything else but who you are. So the process of being comes into existence. And when you can be who you are at any given moment, obviously you will only do things that, what you would do. So then the process of doing comes into existence, doing which is in parallel with the process of being. But all of that, being and doing, cannot come about unless you honestly look at yourself and understand and accept this is who you are. And then you be that. And then when you are that, when you've actually mastered being yourself, because it requires mastery to be who you are. It really requires mastery, because the moment you go out into the world, your mind changes. Your mind adapts to its surroundings. Like an animal, your mind adjusts and adapts to the surroundings. It says things you would not say inside your house automatically. It's not like you're putting up a personality. It just happens like that automatically if you notice. You just say things and you find yourself, playing along to the crowd, whichever crowd you're in. Maybe you have done it for so long, it has become like a trigger movement. The moment you are in a particular situation, your mind, becomes like that. And in a way, that's a very good thing. It means your mind is very adaptable, very lucid. But it also means that you're not really being yourself. This is not who you are. Okay? We need to adapt in this life to survive. We know that. We all know that. But being yourself has nothing to do with survival. It has to do with being. It has to do with, you cannot be if you're surviving. You cannot be if you're just surviving, if you're looking for sustenance. You cannot be. You don't have to have a lot of money. You need a bit of money in this world. And I really mean that. You need a bit of money in this world. You don't need the amount that you think you need. You don't need the amount that people tell you that you need. You really don't. Okay? And do not ever be afraid of pain and suffering. Because that is the primary reason why you keep running after survival. To avoid pain and suffering. You're not really trying to avoid death. You're not as afraid of death as you are of suffering. Do not be afraid of suffering. Okay, because suffering makes, for the lack of a better word, suffering makes a man. Suffering makes a woman out of you. You need to suffer. It is very important to suffer in this world. Do not live behind comfortably closed doors with your air conditioner on. Don't do that. It's good that you have all the resources to make a person comfortable and sleep easy at night after a hard day's work. It's a privilege, it's a gift of sorts. But over time, you kind of detach yourself from the reality of the human condition, which is rooted in suffering. Today, people suffer mentally. Previously, people used to suffer, physically, physiologically, illnesses, early death, beheadings, torture, all that. Now, those things happen at a more, intrinsic mental level of sorts, because we've taken care of the physical. Now, someday, probably, maybe in the distant future, we'll take care of the mental as well. Then a new level of suffering will arise, and it will keep happening. As long as you're afraid of suffering, there will always be suffering, because that's how it is. What you're afraid of, you'll keep delaying it, you'll keep avoiding it, you'll never attend to it, and it keeps growing stronger and stronger. Okay? You cannot end suffering. Let me just put it like that. You cannot end suffering. But you can end your fear of suffering. And then you'll see that the suffering does not really feel like suffering. Then the pain is just something you feel, but not something you romanticize about, not something you are scared of. It is something you feel. Like, nowadays people are always looking peace and happiness. That's what you hear. And at the end of my life, I just want peace. At the end of the day, I just want peace. I don't want this money and this job and this life. I just want some peace. I don't have peace. Then why don't you have peace? Why don't you have peace? If that's what you want at the end of the day. And if you know that the money and the job is delaying your possibility at acquiring peace, why don't you quit your job? Why don't you stop doing what you're doing? But then, I will not know what to do. I will not know where to go, and this and that. Of course you won't. Of course you won't, and that's how it is. You are not supposed to know. You're supposed to find out. You're supposed to put yourself out there and find out how to do something. You're not supposed to just know. These answers are not going to be just given to you. It's not written in some book that you do this, you do that, you turn left, you turn right, and there you have peace of mind, salvation. It's not like that. You actually have to suffer. You have to be uncertain, and you still have to walk in the dark. That's how you get there. There's no other way. But obviously these values and principles, they don't really hold strong in today's world. And again, that's not a problem. It's always like that. That's how time runs its course. Things that were prevalent and relevant back then are no longer prevalent and relevant now. And the same can be said for the things that are relevant and important today. In the future, they won't be. It's a very common course of action from time's perspective. Again, I'm not really deviating from music here. All of these things are somewhere related to the music. Okay. As an honest musician, as a musician who does not want to just play anything for money or just do anything because people like it, you will be uncertain. You will be uncertain, and you will doubt your decisions. You will doubt this life that you have chosen. Especially if the people around you, people who seem to care about you, who say that they care about you, don't really support you, you will be uncertain. And the best thing to do in those situations is ask yourself, why are you trying to be a musician? Why do you want to be a musician? What is your intention behind this decision? Is it because you want to be rich and famous? Is it because you want that lifestyle that you saw in the music videos? Is it because you have an undying love for music? Is it something much deeper than that? Is music a form of revelation to you? And if you're looking to be successful, okay, then a lot of these things that I have said might not necessarily apply. Might not necessarily, maybe it can apply, but it's not like I don't want to be successful. Of course I want to be successful, but that's not my, that's not, that doesn't play on my mind that, I really need to be successful. I'm running out of time. I'm not running out of time. I'm not on a clock. This is not a 9 to 5. Okay, this is not, what's the difference? If you think like that in an office, and if you continue thinking like that when you've been given the opportunity to do something that you truly love, what is the difference? How does it make any sense if you carry the same mentality into this? It doesn't. It's disrespectful to the opportunity provided to you. Treat music as something sacred. Don't try to market music. I know it's a stupid thing to say. Don't, in today's world, it's a really foolish thing, a very immature thing to say, I know, but don't try to market music. If you are good enough, music will choose you. If you're capable enough, music will choose you. Or if the world and if the people think that you're catchy enough, then the world will choose you. The world will make you a star. So you don't have to worry about it. Work on the things that you truly believe in. Work on them. Okay, no matter what people say, no matter how you feel on a given day. Some days you won't like it at all, but sit down with the instrument and within a few minutes you might just forget how you felt. Because music is like that. You forget about yourself. And that is when it actually happens. That is when music truly reaches out to you. As a musician, you are always trying to reach out to music. And music notices the effort that you're putting in. And when you finally forget about yourself, music reaches out to you. And music takes you to a place where you will not be able to go on your own. Your capacity will not allow you to go there. I know this from my own experience. When you try to play music, it doesn't sound good. Just be with music. And once you are with music, play. Don't try to play. Play. Let music determine how it wants to be played through you. Because music understands your physical capacity. Music understands your your capacity to perceive, and the music adjusts itself to provide the best possible outcome through you, considering everything about you, your capacity, the kind of person you are, whatsoever. Don't always rely on your intelligence. Your intelligence can guide you to a certain point. Afterwards, you know, it's up to something better than you, much much better than you. And I think that's it. Believe in music's ability to guide you as a musician. Do not consider yourself to be responsible for the music. Okay? Music is far more than just sound. And no one really knows what music is. You can try. You will not be satisfied with the answer. Not really. Don't try to understand what music is. Don't try to play music. Be with music. Live with it. As your friend, as your companion. Cherish it. Cherish it. And music will run through you. It will acknowledge your effort, your love, your patience, your commitment, your devotion. Okay, that's it. Thank you.